The man I'm going to talk about today is none other than Sinyoro Jackson Chinembiri. He was a well-known Omasganda musician. Omasganda musicians are those one-man band musicians that used to go around bars playing for Maridzawe Kandirwa. They would play in train stations. They would visit schools. I remember when I was at Kurai Primary School in Kambuzuma, they used to come as well and perform for us. So he was one of those musicians. Sinyoro Jackson Chinembiri was born in Buhera. That's where he grew up and started his career. This type of music, it's a genre that started in the 1940s. And it was started by musicians that were imitating country and western musicians from USA, because they used to be played a lot on radio and kumabioscope. So that's where they got the style from, but Zimbabweanized it later. But the sad thing is that his music was never recorded properly for commercial purposes and proper documentation, except for a few videos that were recorded by a visiting European called Frank Hand. And so that's the only documentation that we have. You know what I always say about documentation, we are lacking a lot of documentation of local music. His playing style was slightly different from others, because usually guitarists, we play our guitars like this. We hold them and play them like this, but he usually prefer to place his guitar on his lap like this and then use a slide to finger the frets. It's a style that is usually used by country and western musicians when they play what's known as a pedal steel guitar. They'll be using a slide to play. That's the type of guitar that you hear on country music. Some of those sliding sounds are not from a proper guitar. It's something called a pedal steel guitar, and it's very interesting. There it is. His lyrics were mainly comical and educational. Because you know, Zimbabwean music is very big on consciousness, on teaching people, and that's what he used to do with his music. As usual, I don't want to dwell much on his life history and everything else. I would like to dwell on lessons that we can learn from his music. They mainly copied country western musicians from America, but what they did is instead of sticking to the Jimmy Rogers sound, they moved away from the Jimmy Rogers sound and created their own sound. That sound became very popular because it was Zimbabwean, it was authentic. It also reminds me of reggae music history, because what happened with reggae music is they started by imitating American R&B. They tried to copy American R&B, but for some funny reason their rhythms became syncopated, and they sort of like, I can safely say, they made a mistake, and instead of correcting the mistake, they developed the mistake and created something which was later called reggae music.
We start imitating the rhythm and blues songs. We tried to imitate it. It didn't turn out that way, so we decided to keep this as our own type. That's how that can come in.
It was really rhythm and blues. What we did to this rhythm and blues is like you'd be doing 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. But this kind of we change it to 1, 2, 3, and then it's more 2, 4, 2, 4 instead of 1.
And the same thing happened with hip hop. Hip hop is also an offshoot of Jamaican music, because the father of hip hop is called DJ Kool Herc. He was Jamaican.
1973, a Jamaican guy by the name of Clyde comes from Jamaica in 1967, actually, with his family. He changed his name from writing Cool as Clyde to Kool Herc. What he would do is take James Brown's record specifically, and this other record called Apache by the Amazing Bongo Band. And he would just play the breaks of these records over and over and over again in this style that he called the merry-go-round. In Jamaica, there's a thing called sound systems. And these sound systems are DJs with their own sound system, speakers, amps, etc. They would come out in a big yard, even bigger than this. And they would set up their sound system and play reggae music. Now they would play the regular reggae of the day, but then if you flip the record over, there was something called a version. And the version was the instrumental of that record. They'd flip the record over and some other dude would come and start saying anything to the crowd to get the crowd riled up. The selector, which is what you call a DJ today, was called a selector. This person would be using the mixer to throw the music in. So if the music went if it went like that, he would take the mixer and go bum, 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 bum. He wouldn't let the music go bum, 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 bum. He wouldn't let it do that. Now, Kool Herc brings that to the United States. August 11, 1973, 9 o'clock in the evening, for 25 cents, hip hop began.
So Americans, instead of copying the Jamaican style of singing, using patois and everything, they Americanized the genre and created it and developed it, and out came hip hop. They developed it until they did totally different sound, and right now it's one of the biggest selling genres. So what do we learn from here? The biggest lesson is that trying to copy someone verbatim usually doesn't really produce very good results. It's always good to authenticize a genre. If you like a genre, authenticize it, Zimbabweanize it, and make it your own. That's what these guys did. They authenticized country music and created something of their own, and it became so different to the extent that it needed a new name. When you're original, it doesn't mean you have to create something from zero. You can adapt something, twist it, and make it your own. Because imitation is the greatest flattery that mediocre people pay to great people on. So the best way is to be inspired, copy elements, and create something of your own. That's what these guys did. Then the second lesson that we learn from this is that that topic that I always talk about lack of documentation. Because right now the only documentation we had is documentation that was documented by a kind foreigner. Somebody from Europe was kind enough to record him, and we're thankful about that, because if he had not done that, we wouldn't have anything to show right now. So I think as Zimbabweans we need to adopt the culture of documentation, and I like what some artists do. I saw when Tyrus Riley came to Zimbabwe, I went to the show. He was moving around with a videographer who was photographing and video shooting everything from the backstage, from even when they were just walking in the street. I remember when I was with Oliver Mtukudzi, I used to move with the camera as well, and I've got a lot of footage. And my footage is not on stage footage. My footage is backstage footage. One relax on, joke on, that's the footage that we need, because the stage everybody's got it on. If you take a look at Masganda musicians, there were so many of them, and each one had his own sound. Each one had his own distinct sound. You couldn't mistake Jackson Chinembiri for John White or all the other guys. Each one had his own sound. They were playing the same genre, but each one having his own sound. It doesn't mean that if you're playing the same genre, you've got to sound the same. They give an excuse that is no sunguraji, but that's not true. Because sungura dembo, sungura penka udzoki, sungura jonchi badra. Those sungura genres are totally different, those subgenres. So that's not an excuse. Then lastly, I want to give you a homework to go and research his totem. His totem was Sinyoro And what I heard about that totem is that Sinyoro is from the word Senhor, which is a Portuguese word. And I heard that those Sinyoro people are descendants from Mozambique. You know, the Portuguese usually came via Mozambique and they would settle in Mozambique. And it's either some Portuguese came to Zimbabwe or is a Mozambican national came to Zimbabwe who was called Senhor or whatever. I don't know what happened, but there's a very interesting story. It's unfortunate that I did not have time to research about it, but that's your home. We go and research about the Sinyoro totem. Then tozo panama comments pa Facebook. Okay, so to round off, as usual, I'm going to do a jam session with Sinyoro himself. I am just going to superimpose my instruments on top of his performance. And this performance, again, was recorded by Frank Hand. Thank you very much to him. So let's do the jam session.
Ana Monolio Studio, the harmony of quality and professionalism.